everyone, it's Roger here from thiskingdom.com and vinylmationkingdom.com with the Vinylmation Tag. Now this is a sort of a tag where there's 7 questions about Vinylmation, and I'd love to know your answers to this, so you can comment below. You can even maybe make a video and let me know. You can tweet me about it or let us know on Facebook. Now I basically, one of a great YouTuber, Sarah Snitch. She is a great Disney sort of pin collector, and she makes loads of great videos, so well worth checking out her channel. She made a sort of a pin version of this video, and I thought, well, I already got 3 pins, so therefore it didn't really apply to me, but I thought it would be a perfect way to find out about your Vinylmation collections. I'm going to stick off first. You'll find all 7 below, all the 7 questions. So I'm going to start off with first, what is your oldest Vinylmation? Now, my oldest Vinylmation is my Liberty Minnie Mouse figure. Now I picked this one up while I was in New York with my wife. It came in a little tin. I picked up this one and also the New York one with the I Love New York on it. Now what I was interested in, it was the first time my wife had ever been to America, first time she'd been to New York, so it was a really kind of sentimental trip for us. And it's actually where I discovered Vinylmation. So we were in the store, in Disney store, and they saw this big wide range of Vinylmations. This huge, great big Vinylmation in the corner, the great big New York taxi. And I thought, what are they? They look pretty cool, but there was loads of, no way I'm going to buy any of them. Yeah, right. Okay, yeah, and my wife really does regret going into that store that day now. So there we go. So that is my oldest Vinylmation. It is kind of pretty much one of my favourite figures of all time. I love it. It is the original one, and I'll be honest, I think if I got rid of every other figure, this would probably be the one that would stay, because it does have the most sentimental value as well. Which kind of leads on to a different question. I'm going to do that in a different one. But this one is a really cool figure for me. It's the one that started it all. I wanted basically, I just thought it was a rather cool way of representing our holiday. It was Minnie Mouse. I always loved Disney. We picked up the mouse, we picked up a mug and a few other things that had the same logo on it. So that there was the very first Vinylmation that we got. The newest Vinylmation I got is this one, which is the Yeti Abominable Snowman Chaser from the Mickey Mouse cartoon series. Picked this up while I was in Disneyland Paris, picked up a blind box to do a video for, and managed to pull the Chaser, which was really cool. It's a figure I love. I love the Yeti ride, I love the Everest ride, I also love the Matterhorn, and just in general I just think it's a really cool figure. So yeah, that was my newest Vinylmation. Okay, the next question is a Vinylmation featuring your favourite character. So I really had to think. There's a lot of really good characters within Disney. You know, you've got Darth Vader, you've got all the Marvel ones, you've got all the Disney ones. So I went for this guy, Spider-Man. Maybe not kind of what everyone was expecting. For me, Spider-Man growing up was probably, and still is, one of my favourite all-time characters. The movies, I grew up watching the 70s TV show. I wasn't born in the 70s, but that was always on TV. I used to have the videos. I used to have when I was 3 years old, I had a Spider-Man outfit. My dad used to lift me up and I used to crawl along the ceiling. Spider-Man to me is one of the all-time classic superheroes. I love him. I love anything to do with Spider-Man. Comics, I still watch the cartoons, Spider-Man. And just for me, Spider-Man is one of the coolest characters. And also just love the fact that now that Marvel and Star Wars are all under the Disney umbrella, it just makes it fantastic for me, because all the things I love are all under basically one company now, so it just makes things really cool. So there we go. So that is my favourite character. Remember, all these questions are below, and you can also comment with your own. You can also do your own video. Okay, so the next question is a Vinylmation with a year or a date on it. Now, I've got a few of the the figures that they bring out. Every year Disney bring out a new Vinylmation with years on it. So this one here has got the year 2012 on it. Now on the we've got like all the different characters. We've got Mickey Mouse, we've got Donald Duck, Pluto, and it says there Walt Disney World, Disneyland. Now the reason I went for this one, I have actually, like I said, I've got a few of these. It represents me and my wife going to Walt Disney World for the first time, for her anyway. I'd been a few times before, it's got to be it. But it was off a trip to Disney World. I managed to persuade her to come to Disney World following a kind of a mini trip to Disneyland Paris. she absolutely fell in love with Disney, and then, you know, we've been able to go back a couple of times, different parks, etc. But this one was kind of represents our holiday, really, and that's what I always think with the year ones. They're great sort of mementos if you've gone there on holiday or just in general of anything that happens. Yeah, so the 2012 one is a Vinylmation that represents our holiday to Disney World. Okay, so question number 5. A Vinylmation with a funny story behind it. Now, so I'm going to kick off with this one, which is sort of a Vinylmation with a funny story. It's kind of one of those odd ones of, I don't know if I have a Vinylmation with a funny story. It's kind of one of those things of, you know, being a international collector has meant that a lot of my Vinylmations I have to collect while through online, and I buy a lot. So going into stores and buying things, it's not something I get to do very much. So kind of a one with a funny story behind it. It's a bit, you know, it's like, you know, even like this figure was a perfect example. I went to Disneyland Paris this week. I brought one blind box. I come back and that was the one I pulled. But yeah, it's really hard. A Vinylmation with a funny story behind it. And I'd love to know if you've got anything particular. I find, for example, like my story about, you know, how I picked up my very first Vinylmation. Now that was pretty interesting. For me personally, obviously you might not care, but that's up to you. So number 5, the question is a Vinylmation with a funny story behind it. So, you know, every Vinylmation probably has got a story behind it, where you brought it, how you brought it, how you got hold of it. You know, you might have got it in a tray box, you might have got it in from a blind box, you might have just been waiting a long time for it. So this one here is going to be this one. This is the Peter Pan sort of Never Grow Up Kinder. Now I love this little Kinder. It sits right at the very top of my collection in the living room. It was actually brought for me by my in-laws. My mother-in-law and father-in-law brought this one for me just as I got into Vinylmation. And the reason why I kind of hold sentimental was basically my wife kind of managed to kind of sort it out, so I got this one for Christmas. The reason why I love it is I like Peter Pan, I like Tinkerbell, but what I really like is I sell ice cream. I've been selling ice cream since I was about 6-7 years old. I've had ice cream vans, ice cream trailers, ice cream bikes, and now I have sort of a seaside cafe where I sell a lot of ice cream. And because of that, ice cream is it's basically what my entire career has been sort of based around. And this one here kind of represents that. It represents you know, a sundae, it represents ice cream, and for that reason it just kind of, and it's always stood out as kind of one of the main Vinylmations in my series, in my collection, that kind of helps represent me. I have a few different ice cream themed sort of vinyls, but this one is the collectible that I love. It was probably one of the very first sort of collectibles that I got, and for me this here it represents an ice cream stand, ice cream thing. It just represents my life. And so for that, this one has kind of always stood out as maybe one of my favourite Vinylmations. It still has a place, pride and centre, in kind of all the new ones over the last 4 or 5 years. This one is still the one that is at the very top of the chain. And I gotta be honest, it's gonna be the one that will be with me probably the longest, because the size is a 9-inch, and I just think it's a fantastic figure. Right, number 6 is a Vinylmation which has the most sentimental value. Like I've previously kind of mentioned the Peter Pan one, I've also mentioned the New York one. They've all kind of got that kind of sentimental value to me. Now, behind me, and you can just see them there, they're just maybe out of view, and to be honest, all of this they're all piled on top of each other, and I wasn't going to take them all off and completely wreck the display to get them. But they are the they're the London 9-inch Vinylmations. Now they represent London. You have the bus, and you also have the taxi. Now, what is interesting for me is why they hold sentimental value is my wife brought them for me. It was our first kind of, it was one of the first few Vinylmations I got. They were on the UK website. They were a Christmas present. But yeah, so those two figures there, the big 9 inches, they represent England, which is always a good thing, because they represent, there's so many vinyls representing the parks and representing America and Japan. To have a Vinymations that represent the UK is great, and I think that has a sort of a thing to us. And also, like I said, there were presents for my wife, and so for that reason alone, they're very kind of sentimental. They're very much classic figures that that represent me more, because they're UK ones, and we don't get a lot of UK ones. And those figures there are, they're pretty cool. London buses. Me and my wife, if we go on holiday up to there for a few days, we're jumping on and off the buses, etc. They just represent London, and I think that's always a great thing. Okay, now for question number 7 is the Vinylmation that took you the longest to get. So I'm going to pick this one up. This is the Park 1 Haunted Mansion creepy wallpaper. Now this one kind of represents the wallpaper from the Haunted Mansion, one of my all-time favourite rides. Whenever we used to go there to the parks as kids, my dad loved the Haunted Mansion. It's his favourite ride. We always went on it. He used to probably take us on it twice, 3 times. He's not a big roller coaster fan, so those kind of family attractions were great sort of family experiences, and the Haunted Mansion has always been part of that. And yeah, it is, every time we go to the parks, I take everybody onto the Haunted Mansion, and it's a small world, regardless of if they want to do or not. It's Disney tradition that you have to do that one. That's kind of it. So, what is interesting about that Vinylmation was this is Park 1. Now, Park 1 Vinymations were the very first series. They have a lot of historical reference for the Vinylmation collectors. Park 1s are usually also one of the more expensive figures. So, for me, it was... The Park 1 series was, when I started collecting, was something I could never afford. And I could never justify spending, $100, $120 on a figure. Just couldn't justify it when you could buy them for $10. So over time and years of collecting, I slowly started to add a few Park 1 figures into my collection. Now, that was kind of one of those figures that I had always wanted, and it took a lot of sort of lots of time searching for it, finding it at the right price, and sort of getting it. So the Park 1 series was always this kind of, I wouldn't say mythical, but it was always this series that had a lure to it to me, because it was the original Vinylmation series, and I know a lot of people feel the same. Now obviously over the years, the Park 1 series, if you put it up against the series from today, the designs are very different. It's very plain, very basic. But because it's the original series, it's still got that place that makes them special. They are very, there's not that many of them, because they didn't make as many as they did for the previous series. And because it is the very first series of Vinylmation, they do have that special place. And so for me, the Park 1 still represents one of those all-time things of chasing. That was the one thing and it took me about 2 years from start buying Park 1s to actually till I got the set of 11. I still haven't got the chaser from Park 1. That's probably still the one figure in that I'd love to add to my collection one day. But I need it to drop in price way. The price that I used to sit at like $700, $800, $900, something I just can't justify spending on. That's my entire collection would probably cost that. So there we go. So I'd say the creepy wallpaper was the one Vinylmation that really kind of has been one that I really was trying so hard to get, and the whole Park 1 series kind of fell into that sort of same category. It's quite hard to pick one specific one, like the Yeti was another one, and Fig Mouse. But this is the thing with now, as I'd love to know your responses. Now, all 7 questions are going to be underneath. You can find them all there. I'd love to see either a video response, let us know, tag us, send us a tweet, and just really, have a bit of fun with this. But I'd love to know what you guys think. You can also comment on the website as well. I just thought this would be a cool little way of just finding out a little bit about you. You can find out a little bit about me with my Vinylmation collection. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I shall see you guys later.